What I've got for you today is an ISO test, a nice, boring body cap ISO test to just go through the range on a whole bunch of cameras, show what the noise levels are, and compare them to each other. So that's what we have for you today. If you're new to the channel, I'm Josh from Story King Studios. We're a video production company in Central California. So without a whole bunch more stuff, let's jump into the test. We have the URSA Cine 12K LF. We have the FX6 FX3 FX30. Also, the Blackmagic full frame 6K, which is basically the Pyxis in the pocket body. So let's jump in and check out these ISO tests. You might be as surprised as I was by how well this big old dude performed. I don't know if I should say surprised, right? I mean, it's a groundbreaking new sensor, so you shouldn't be surprised. But compared to Blackmagic's previous offerings, wow. Also, just a quick note, we're going to be at NAB 2025 this year, so if you guys are going to be there, drop a note in the comments or hit us up, numbers on the screen. Feel free to shoot us a call or a text. I would love to meet up and say hi to you guys out in person at NAB for those of you that are going to be there. So what I'm going to do is quickly roll through all the ISOs on each camera, and then I'll put up some comparisons at 800 ISO and at 3200 ISO, because those are kind of what the cameras share. And then I'll also give you some blue hour footage that I shot. And I'm not claiming that the 12K Cine is a low light camera, but it is the best low light camera I think Blackmagic has ever released. Check out the tests. All right, quick note on the way I set this test up. This is a full frame image. I sliced it in half and exposed an extra 2 stops, and then sliced kind of that other section to the right and zoomed in 4x both top and bottom, so you can see better what's going on. So there's like 4 things going on at the same time, but just a good way to kind of see the grain pattern 4 different ways. All right, first up we've got the Cine 12K in 12K. Stepping through the ISOs here, what I notice is, man, this thing is clean. 400, 800, totally great. 1600 is where you start to kind of like notice a little bit more noise, a little bit of fixed pattern stuff in there, but still totally usable. 3200, I'm like, okay, now it's noisy. Now it's noisy. So now we're looking at 9K crop, which some people are saying this is Super 35 crop. It didn't look like Super 35 to me. I'll just say that. But I didn't look in the manual. So maybe it is Super 35. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's a crop. Similar performance in this mode. I'm not seeing huge notable differences. Like, yeah, I noticed the chroma a little bit more. Now, if we go into 8K, which is a downscaling of the 12K, I'm like, man, it's so clean. I mean, the 12K was clean, but the 8K is even cleaner, which makes sense because you're downscaling that larger sensor. And then when we look at it in 4K, theoretically, you're going to get even cleaner results than the 8K, but pretty much the same. But if anything, a little cleaner. Also, I don't know if I noticed, but in this test, I've certainly got no issues with this camera in 4K at 1600. 3200, is a little more noticeable, but 16, I'm okay. So one thing I wanted to know, I just wanted to verify, ISO is just metadata, and yes, it is. You can see I shot an image in 200 and in 3200, and then I compared them to each other and overlaid them, and you can see the difference. So now let's jump into the FX6. Less chroma noise than the URSA, but more lumen noise. So I would call it overall noisier, which kind of surprised me. I was like, wow, I thought that the image out of the URSA would be noisier than the image out of the FX6, but I think I was wrong. So as I look at this, the URSA's cleaner. I mean, they're both good, but FX3, I would expect this to be a touch cleaner than the FX6. Same sensor, but it's got some in-camera noise reduction that you just can't even turn off. So I do feel like I see a little bit of that noise reduction happening, so it feels a little cleaner. I think at the same ISO is a little less of the dancing, but still overall very similar to the FX6. Just a hair cleaner. Obviously, once you hit that dual base ISO and 12.8, you notice a huge difference. You know, it jumps back to from where the FX6, I'm sorry, from where it was getting at like 6400. So yeah, you can see that. But obviously, as you crank this ISO, and we've shot things at these crazy high ISOs and been like, you know what, that's a usable image. That's the crazy part. Like we've done some real low light stuff and been like, you know what, it's low light. We're going to embrace low light and say this is okay. And it was like, you know, it's usable. It's noisy, but it's usable. FX30. This is not a dual native ISO camera. It's got a base of 800 and 2500. So definitely expect more noise out of this camera, but very similar noise to the FX3, FX6. Interesting, I noted some slight color shifts, like green, magenta, back and forth on the FX30 in particular. Like there it went kind of green. So interesting, just to note kind of a subtle shift. I'm not sure how much that affects the actual video image. These are all just, you know, with a cap on. But you can see, and this guy does not go as high in ISOs as the big brothers. All right, now we got the 6K full frame, which is basically the Pyxis. And this guy is not as good in low light as the URSA. The 400 image is comparable maybe to the 800 image, like not even really. It's more like somewhere between 200 and 400 to hit the image 800 ISO on the big boy. So there's two ISO ranges. Something I learned doing this test. 6400 is the top of the high ISO range, and if you go to the higher ISOs, like 8,000 plus, it's actually baked in. You can't change the ISO in post, so you lose that raw ISO ability to change the ISO. You can't even change within that bracket. It's just gone. That's it. So that's good to know. Now we are looking at the same camera in 4K DCI instead of 6K. Very similar results. I feel like the noise is a little bigger. You're cropped in on the sensor. That makes sense. But nothing, you know, earth shattering. And I didn't do the full top end of the ISO range on this camera, 1632. I'm just like, I wouldn't use, I'm like 1600 is probably for me the max usable. So going to 32 and 64, I'm like, I'm just not doing that on this camera. But I didn't buy this camera for its low light performance. I'm going to use lights when I'm using this camera. All right, let's compare these guys at 800 ISO. So we've got the 12K. Compare that to the FX6. And I'm like, I think the 12K is cleaner. Back to the 12K. It's cleaner than the FX6, which I did not expect. FX3, which I think is a little cleaner than the FX6, but still, the 12K is cleaner at 800 ISO. FX30, I wouldn't expect it to be as clean, and it's not. So that's great. They're all still respectable. And then the 6K, woohoo, definitely not as clean as the 12K, which is very clean at 800. Very clean. Now let's look at 3200. You can start to see some noise at 3200. But I mean, look how much more noise is on the FX6. I might say it's more pleasing noise, but there's more of it. The 12K has less noise than the FX6. FX3, better. You get some interesting scanning. And so the FX3 is maybe a little more comparable, but I think the 12K is still cleaner. FX30, I think, is pretty comparable noise-wise. Different noise, but comparable amount of noise. And then the 6K is like, this is garbage. We're not using this image. I mean, I'm sure this cleans up. I didn't do any cleanup tests, but I'm sure this would be acceptable if you clean it up. So the 12K surprisingly did well there. So I don't know about you, but for me, watching through all that test footage, I was really impressed by what the Cine 12K can do. Again, it's not an FX6 or an FX3, A7S3, whatever. Like, it's not a low light beast, right? It doesn't have a dual native ISO. You can't put it at 12,800 and go, wow, this looks really great. It doesn't do that. But what it does do, it does well. And as I played with the image a little bit, what I found is it's amazing at saving the highlights and bringing exposure back from clipping, from overexposure. but it's not as good at bringing up underexposure. Now, it has incredible range, right? So for example, if you were to shoot at a good middle ISO like 400 or 800, you've got all kinds of range. But what you can't do is shoot at 3200 and then boost the image and expect something good. You're not going to get it. But if you're shooting at a good mid-range ISO and then you're going to push the image up and down in post, that you can do. And you can do it really well. I would argue you can push it better than you can push the Sony footage. But you're comparing a RAW to a not RAW video format, so I don't think that's even like a fair comparison. It's not to say that the camera's better, it's just, it's recording RAW, and so you have more flexibility in post. All that stuff you can do in post is nice. To me, as a DP, I'm trying to nail the image in camera. I'm trying not to go, oh, we'll fix it 5 stops in post. I don't care if you can, that's great for those times when you do need to fix something 3, 4, 5 stops in post. But I'm not here to make those kind of images. So I'm trying to get it right. And so my quest in all of this is what's the best ISO to shoot at? And after these tests and some other tests I'm doing, I feel like 400 or 800 ISO are the 2 best ISOs to kind of run this camera at in terms of kind of where that puts the dynamic range and also what you get out of the image. So let's see some blue hour footage. This is all shot on the Blaze Arri anamorphics. Everything is noted there on the screen. So at 800, totally good, totally good. Throwing on some NDs and then dropping the ISO in post. So we're at 3200 ISO. Like, you know, this is a surprisingly good image. The shadows are noisy, but like I'm surprised. Now, once I add 2 stops in resolve, obviously garbage. Like you cannot save low light in this camera. Just wait till I add 6 stops of ND and add 4 stops in resolve. Like what a mess. Like there's no cleaning this image up. I mean, you can do some cleanup, but there's no noise reduction on any of these images. This is just straight out of the camera. All I did was just pump the exposure in the HDR, in the RAW settings. This is all just camera RAW developed with a basic LUT that I made, which is basically a color space transform. 400 ISO once I stop the, open up the lens, I should say. T2 is soft on the Blaze Arri, so don't judge me on lens sharpness. I'm just looking at exposure. 1600, still a good usable image. I mean, look at that. Yes, there's some noise in the shadows, but I would use this all day. Now, once I have to go to 3200 and add a stop to get back to the same exposure, that's too far. 32, I think, is too far, and then adding to 32, definitely too far. Now, when I say 32 is too far, that's in the shadows. So if you're crunching the LUT a little and whatever, like, hey, you can make this usable. This is a conversion, shot in 8K as an option. So you can see that with the 800 ISO. This is the 9K crop. And then we'll also do 4K. I'm sorry, 8. Yeah, so we did 8K. This is 9K crop. And then this is 12K. I'm just like, this thing is so dang clean in 800. I kind of can't believe it. Even in the shadows, it's clean. It's great. I am very happy with the low light performance. This is 12K. 1600, you start to catch a little bit more of that noise. A little more noise as the sun is like literally gone. So after checking out that blue hour footage, obviously you can't really save an underexposed image when you've already pushed the camera to its max, right? You can't push the camera to its max and then save it still. Like, no, it just breaks, right? This is not a low light camera. So we're not putting this in the class of the FX6, A7S3, FX3, any of these low light beasts. It's not one of those cameras. But you put this thing out in daylight, and it's going to be fantastic. Or in a well-lit scene, fantastic. We shot some interviews with this, which we'll be putting out some videos about, kind of do that. And we shot the interview with the 12K Cine and also with the 6K as a 2-cam thing. So I'll be putting out some video on how that turned out and kind of matching those cameras and things like that. We shot color charts, which made matching pretty straightforward. The short version is I didn't have any real problems, right? Like I'm throwing some footage up so you can kind of see just sort of what it was looking like. Not seeing any real problems. Everything was great. People are asking about sound. The sound is fine. You know, I'll make a separate video on the interviews and the sound and matching the cameras and all that good stuff. But anyway, very happy with these cameras. However, at the end of the day, right, the finished image isn't that much different than the finished image we were getting on Sony. So I don't want you to be misled by the idea that this camera is 10 times better than the FX6 or some other Sony camera. Is it better? I think so. I think it's better. That's why I sold my Sony gear at a loss and bought this camera out of my own pocket to make this upgrade, because I think this is a better camera for my purposes. Now, depending on what you do, it might not be the best camera for your purposes. If you're filming weddings, if you're filming run and gun stuff, if you're filming documentary stuff where you're not able to light things and it's very run and gun, the Sony with the autofocus, with the IBIS, with the low light capabilities, probably the better camera for you. But if you're doing corporate and commercial work where everything is lit, everything is controlled, and you have a chance to put the settings the right way for the shot that you're doing, it's not just run, then, I mean, these cameras are great. Now, both cameras can do both jobs. Obviously, this is not going to be very fun to drag around at a wedding or some kind of event where you're moving quickly. So I wouldn't recommend this for that. But if you're doing corporate and commercial stuff, this guy is going to live on sticks, right? This guy's on sticks or on a dolly or on an easy rig, because this is not something you want to be hand-holding all day. You're going to be hurting if you do that. I hope all these videos I'm dropping about the Cine 12K LF have been valuable to you. I'm just trying to figure this camera out. It's new. Like I've said, I've been working with Blackmagic since 2017, so I'm not new to Blackmagic. I took a little break for the last couple years, went Sony because it was a better fit for the work we were doing at the time, but I'm back to Blackmagic because it's a better fit for the work we're doing now. And this camera is so good. It just kind of blows my mind. And every time I do a test and try to push it, I'm just like, wow, you can really push this thing. And I think at the end of the day, that flexibility is part of what makes this camera, for me, the better choice than, say, a Sony camera. And again, we haven't left our Sony kit. We sold the FX6, we sold the FX3. We are still using the FX30, still using the A7S III, because those cameras do what we need, right? We don't need the big FX6 camera because we have a new big camera. So that box has been checked. And we don't need 3 of the other Sony bodies because we've got 2, and 2 is enough for what we need. And selling the FX3 and the FX6 helped me buy this bad boy. So that is fantastic. Anyway, hope you enjoyed watching this video. I enjoyed making it. Let me know in the comments what you think.